What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 29 of the Halving Report. We've recently went through the third Bitcoin halving on May 11th. There's about 1,440 days left until the next Bitcoin halving. The price of Bitcoin is around $9,500 US at the time of this recording. Today we have Jason Williams on the show. Jason is the founder of FastMed, the second biggest urgent healthcare company in America, and sold it for nearly $500 million. He's a co-founder and partner at Morgan Creek Digital Assets and is also the president and CEO of PRTI Tech. Everybody, welcome Jason to the show.
Thanks for coming out of the podcast today. I do want to talk lots of crypto with you, but you have such a success story with FastMed and great experience in the American health system. I wanted to start by asking you to give us your take on the current state of COVID-19 in America, as you guys just recently reported over 100,000 recorded deaths now.
Yeah, so Brad, thanks for having me. Just to give some people some context, I practiced emergency medicine for over a decade as a physician assistant in both the emergency departments in North Carolina, but also inside my own practice, FastMed. Having a retrospective perspective is dangerous, and I have one, right? So we've been quarantined since March 18th. We've been watching what's happened in China and other countries in regards to COVID. And at this point, North Carolina in particular is one of the handful of states that is still really locked down and shuttered. We're seeing small businesses now bring lawsuits against the state, specifically gyms, I think filed gyms, physical fitness places that are still shuttered by the governor. They're bringing lawsuits against the government, local government, in regards to them not allowing them to have a livelihood. And I certainly have had to close and fire lots of people. It's been heartbreaking to do over Zoom. I think in total, last I counted, in terms of our own portfolio, family businesses and startups, it was about 144 employees that we had to let go. Never in my 20-year career of being a CEO have I had to do anything like that. I've been through lots of economic downturns. I started my own business when I was 23. I dealt with 9/11, 2001, economic issues in 2008, the housing collapse, and what we faced recently. But it's been horrible. But that retrospective perspective allows me to now look at the data and say we have overreacted in regards to our response. We have quarantined the well, so people who are not sick, and that doesn't make much sense to me now. When you look at the data in regards to how COVID-19 has affected people, it certainly has been dramatic. Lots of people have been affected. It's affected more severely those with comorbidities. Comorbidities meaning if you have issues with your lungs, liver, kidneys, if you're old, or very young, it seemed to have affected you dramatically, more dramatically in terms of morbidity and mortality. It has affected some population, some of the healthy population, caused respiratory issues. But we've seen all these perverted economic incentives also retrospectively. When you look at how it's affected the healthcare system, how the healthcare system responded in regards to treatment, how it's been overly incentivized to use heroic type invasive procedures. You look at reimbursements for outpatient or inpatient treatment of COVID versus using respirators. Again, those are really difficult things to digest retrospectively. So, now as someone who's still 4 weeks away from being allowed to go to a gym, most restaurants are still closed. It's a really odd place to be. We're not sure if we're going to be able to travel freely. Still can't get passport updates to get out of the country in terms of our own personal lives. So I can explore it more deeply, but that's kind of a brain dump in regards to how I feel right now. I think there's a lot of politics at play, in regards to a Republican versus Democrat response in regards to COVID, and I don't like it.
Now, just to clarify, recently you were more avid for lockdown measures and wearing PPE. Now, so where do you stand now in terms of lockdown measures?
It hasn't changed in regards to the initial look. The information changed. So I would say we should, as U.S. citizens, protect the elderly, protect those with comorbidities, protect those who are fragile or susceptible to COVID-19. We should be testing. We should have options for immunization, and we should be wearing PPE, washing our hands, and social distancing. But you cannot destroy the country economically by keeping businesses shuttered and destroy my opportunity to have to live. This doesn't make sense anymore.
No, I tend to agree with you. Up here in Ontario, we just got shut down for another 10 days. Beaches and everything's like that's closed. But people are really eager to get out there, and the weather just turned super nice here in the past week. So all the young people are they're at the beach. They're just flooding the gates, basically. They are saying they are going to ticket, but I haven't seen too much of that. There just seems to be too many people involved for them to enforce anything seriously.
I mean, look what happened at Lake of the Ozarks during the Memorial Day weekend and holiday. As far as I understand, they've asked for elective quarantine for 14 days of all those who went to the Lake of the Ozarks, and they may be putting travel restrictions on those folks. And we know by what happened in Florida that they can track and trace mobile devices.
Where do you stand in terms of how far the government should go in these invasive technologies and tracking you?
I don't know how I don't know how I feel about that. I don't like it. And, again, I'm only thinking out loud, but I think as happened with 9/11, right? When you may be too young to have lived this, but when the Twin Towers fell in New York, what we got was war and some of our freedoms taken away in the form of something called the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act really, when you look at it now, again, retrospectively, the Patriot Act was an assault on global banking by the United States. It enforced something called AML KYC, anti-money laundering and know your customer laws. So you could not operate anonymously in the banking world. But it also allowed the United States to, at any moment, say that any bank in the world was operating in terrorism or with terrorists, moving money for terrorist organizations, and the government could cut them off. So what you got in 9/11 was the Patriot Act. And what I believe we're getting right now is a test on dispersing peaceful protests and organization. We're getting track and trace. And I mean, I was just looking over my shoulder. It looks like the president just signed some executive order on social media directed at Twitter and Facebook. I don't know the specifics, but what I expect it to be is that if you're posting things online, they're going to hold Twitter and Facebook liable.
When people take in this information, I think a lot of people like to go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, but it seems like with all these invasive technologies and tracking and knowing every little thing about your life, and we know a lot of these things, like if you listen to Edward Snowden and people in that area. Now, would you say this is actors that are kind of pushing this agenda, or would you think that it's kind of just like a bureaucratic mess?
No, I think it's more thought out than not. And I'll use this example. When we went to the war in Iraq and the Gulf War, they deployed stealth bomber technology, and it was fascinating to watch. A spacecraft, or essentially an aircraft, not a spacecraft, but an aircraft that was radar resistant for the most part. That technology was developed in 1974. So it was like 20-year-old tech. Now, you're just recently, you have the U.S. military, the Pentagon, declassifying the fact that there are unidentified flying aircraft that our F-16s and F-18 Hornets have engaged. And the pilots are like, dude, it's not from this earth. And nobody's really batting an eye. So, my whole point is, just because we haven't seen it, just because we don't understand it, doesn't mean that it's not being pursued, developed. The technologies aren't being analyzed. I'm not a conspiracy theorist person. I'm someone who says if it's in the realm of possible, it probably is possible. And if you can imagine it or seen it in a movie, it's probably coming.
Jumping back to where you just said about the pilots, because I did see that the Pentagon released those images, but when I saw the images, they look kind of shabby and not to show too much. But so I kind of moved on. I didn't really dig too deep into it. But you said that some of the pilots said that what they were engaging with was not from this earth.
Yeah, Brad, those images are the flight recordings. So they're not like somebody sitting on their porch taking a video of something that's in the sky.
Right,
You're talking about the best track and trace technology on these war machines that are unable to lock on these unidentified flying aircraft. They're unable to lock on. The pilot, through his own training, was able to manually lock on, and these aircraft are moving in such a way that defies human engineering.
Oh my God. I didn't get all of that.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
we're numb. We're numb.
Mm-hmm.
It's like lifting weights. After you pull so many reps, your muscles just get fatigued. Well, your brain is the same way. If I bombard it with information like headlines, eventually you get numb to it. And that's what's happened. You literally aren't contemplating that the Pentagon has said they're aliens.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like every church, everyone in the planet on this planet should be rethinking everything. I mean, like, wake up your brain.
That's something I've been saying recently too, is that we have just information overload now. It's literally information wars, digital wars, overload people with information. You really don't know what to think. The average person going to work, doing their 9-to-5 job, doesn't have time to look into every little thing like this. And there's so much crazy shit going on in the world right now. Like, I understand like the technology is great and everything, but like when you see that, what I meant was like when you see that picture, you can't really tell what really it is. And I just wasn't sure. But after hearing what you had to say about that, I mean, that's mind blowing.
You're talking about, look, when the guitar player for Blink-182, which was a punk band when I was in college, is leading a conspiracy theory, I can see you kind of saying next. Like, I'm not going to invest a lot of time there. But this guy was right, because just years later, this becomes declassified, and literally the videos are, in fact, from U.S. aircraft that were flying to engage unidentified flying objects, aircraft that were then later determined to be not of this planet. Hello.
But I've always thought if there was aliens in our vicinity that they would engage with us because their technology would just be so much greater that we would be nothing to them, right?
Yeah, but think about it from the reverse. If you have an organization or some being that's living its own technological trajectory using different minerals, metals, substances that are different, couldn't they be looking at our planet and going, wow, look at that combustion engine. Look at that thing. They could be just as inquisitive and inquiring as we are. And they don't have to be like us. They don't have to look like us. They don't have to think like us. It's just a different organism, different life form.
Yeah, I guess it's really so unknown. It's hard to...
It's crazy. Yeah. And look, back to like the coronavirus or COVID-19. I mean, man, you start to think about what if this was a bioweapon being developed in Wuhan by the Chinese government to do certain things. Because right now, wars don't have to be traditional wars or mechanized wars or special forces type wars or economic wars. They can be biologic wars, right? And think about this biologic war that could have been potentiated on the United States. It wrecked us economically. We went from having a roaring economy to wiping out all of the jobs that have been created since the 1930s. We're literally at like 30%, 40% unemployment. We have 150 million people that were employed, where 30% of them are now unemployed. A lot of those businesses aren't coming back.
Now, you use China as an example as someone that may put out a biological war weapon. Would you think there's...
I'm just using COVID. I'm saying, right now, that sounds insane.
Right.
And if I told you in 1974 that we have aircraft that look like spaceships that you can't detect on radar, you'd be saying, Jason, that sounds insane. And then if I showed you those ships in the war, they're bombing and nobody can detect them, and then you see them land and you're like, holy crap, I've never seen anything like that in my life. That's pretty fascinating. Fast forward now. Those images were from 1994.
Oh my God. That's
1994. Yeah. We've been chasing UFOs around the coast, east and west coast, since 1994. Probably before that, but I'm saying those images, that video, I think, was from 1994.
I wonder, like, is there any other explanation then, or like that's the consensus? Like, this thing is out of this world. This is alien like we've encountered alien.
I think 100% of those pilots and the people that have looked at that are saying it moved at speeds and angles and trajectories. We don't have machines that can do that. That's why I say it's a machine not of this world. And to have a machine not of this world is alien. There's no other explanation. So,
wow.
And at this point, I've arrived at that conclusion. Like, I'm not going to allow my own anesthesia, right, or blue-pilled existence. I keep this phone on my desk here because when we get too blue-pilled, I pick it up and say, hey, Tank, get me out of here. It's the Matrix. It's just literally like, give me a break. Give me a break.
I didn't intend to go too deep into the alien talk, and I mean it's absolutely amazing. I've always believed that the aliens existed 100%. However, I didn't believe we'd ever come in contact with them. But after seeing the images and now after speaking to you, I'll have to obviously do my own research, of course. But pretty crazy shit.
And most things can be explained. Like a lot of stuff, because I dive down the rabbit hole all the time on this. Like recently, I was reading about like King Tut, I think it was. When they went into his tomb, they found daggers that were made of iron. So that alchemy didn't exist at that time, shouldn't have existed. It's kind of predating some of the capabilities of smelting iron. And then they analyzed the daggers, and the daggers were derived from meteors. I mean, come on, man. This is crazy. It's amazing, right?
Yeah, no, I'm mind blown. I didn't expect to be so mind blown.
Look, yeah, the Egyptians found a meteor and they took the metals from the meteor and made daggers. I mean, wake up your brain. If not, just learn. Just learn. Everyone we're talking to has computers in their pocket that are more powerful than anything we've ever had access to. The information is incredible. Use it to explore, to expand your mind, to learn, because all of that will help you be more successful, live a deeper life, because your life is over in a flash. It's over.
Yeah, life is definitely way too short. I think a lot of people take that for granted. So that's a great message you're sending out. I'm just pivoting a little bit into a little bit different topic here. I mean, you exited from FastMed some years ago and have since started PRTI. From my understanding, you've acquired some assets from overseas to start this up, and you're transforming billions of waste tires into valuable commodities to be revenue generating and energy producing. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how PRTI utilizes the commodities that you produce and how you go about choosing which commodity to say a truckload of tires would be refined into.
Yeah, so in 2015, I sold FastMed. That was my startup that I started out of college. Sold it for $500 million. And as part of that transaction, I wasn't allowed to practice medicine or work in that healthcare space for 10 years. So I have patents that I've written in synthetic polymer science and robotics. And I was really interested in building some type of renewable energy business that was decentralized, but also not subsidized. So I saw like wind and tidal and geothermal and solar. They didn't really pencil economically, but I was really fascinated by waste to energy. So with my interest in synthetic polymer science, I started looking at a patent that made a claim that they could take whole car tires that were trash tires that would typically end up in a landfill or be shredded and buried or burned. They could take those whole car tires, not pre-process them in any way, put them in a machine, a very simple machine, and after about 20 minutes of energy, demanufacture those tires into the constituent parts that they were made. A tire is made of oil, carbon, steel, and some fibers. And what you'd be left with are those commodities, and you can sell them, right? Oil is sellable. Solid carbon, it's like Appalachian coal, so it can be burned for fuel. Steel is a commodity. And synthetic gas, which is part of the tire, could be combusted and turned into power. So that was super interesting. The business thesis or hypothesis was I can get paid to take tires, and then I can put them in this simple machine and I can make these tradable commodities out of the back. So you have like 5 or 6 different revenue streams. And once I started to pro forma out the plan, that was the next thing I did. So in 2015, I raised, $20 million or so from friends and family and my own personal investment. And I built that plant in Franklinton, North Carolina, and started processing tires and making Bitcoin.
You use all that energy to power Bitcoin mining?
Yeah. So what I found was once we got the machine running and I started making the commodities, I could sell the oil, sell the carbon, sell the steel, and generate power. So we did that at first. We sold our oil, we sold our steel, we sold our carbon, and we generated power. And I could sell the power into the grid. And you have these things called PPAs, a purchase power agreement, and you can sign those purchase power agreements for a long term. So Duke Power or Wake the co-op, Wake Energy here in North Carolina would buy the power for like 4 cents a kilowatt hour. But I was trying to think of ways that I could monetize the power better than just selling it into a long-term purchase power agreement. And that's what got me and Pomp interested in looking at cryptocurrency mining. So rather than do the PPA route, I ended up building my first crypto mine out of some GPUs, and we were actually mining Ethereum first, but we used the power in that capacity.
So when you first started PRTI, it wasn't originally intended to power cryptocurrency mining. It was for other things. How long did you operate before the Bitcoin came into the picture?
No, not long at all, right? Because I was trying to monetize all the revenue streams. And when it came down to power, it was really wonky. You had to put in interconnect agreements and negotiate these contracts, and the contracts were long-term. So rather than do that, I wanted to be able to use the load of power I was generating for parasitic needs or my own needs. And the best way to monetize that was through mining. We arrived at that thesis really quickly. I mean, we created in oil, you have something called a cracking spread. It just has to do with where's the arbitrage from setting up an oil well and selling the oil. That's the crack spread. Same thing happened. We created Bitcoin or Ethereum spreads. It was literally like, what is the entry price, bare bones price that I could mine Bitcoin and still make money versus sell it to the grid? And the price of Ethereum or Bitcoin had to drop pretty low before I would sell power to the grid.
Yeah, no, I love that model. It's so circular. I mean, you got all bases covered there. Yeah, it's progressive in many ways. You're utilizing waste, converting it, and using it for something that I think, blockchain in general is just absolutely going to change the future, right? So,
and it really flew in the face of those who were saying, like, when you remember when Bitcoin, it's been dead so many times, but before the last halving and before or during the last bull run, so 2016, 2017, people started to say, oh, Bitcoin mining is such a waste of energy, and we're going to use up the world's power and all this nonsense. But it really has fueled a renaissance in renewable energy creation, because what Bitcoin miners have to do is drive their power costs down. And how they do that is by finding alternative or stranded energy resources to mine off of. They don't want to buy 8 cent or 10 cent a kilowatt hour power. They want to get down to 2 or 1, or in PRTI case, 0 energy cost.
I mean, this really helps the case for climate change activists, would you say?
Without a doubt. Look at what Bitcoin miners are doing right now. They're going to flare gas, right? So if you go to Permian or oil producer, they have to flare some of the synthetic gases that are coming off the well to keep operating. And that is polluting the environment, and it's a waste of energy, right? You're letting off a lot of thermal energy, and you're just burning a fuel source. What these guys are doing is they're using that wellhead gas, turning it back into power generation. And I bet you there's a positive carbon footprint, a better carbon footprint, when you start to calculate the net effect of whether you're developing this circular type economy.
Are there any sort of government subsidies you can get with doing that type of thing, or no?
I'm sure they are, but there are, but I don't tend to pursue those. Like, I build businesses that are profitable and cash flow and exist outside of subsidies, right? As I started this discussion, I wasn't interested in solar or tidal or wind that was heavily subsidized to make it work economically. So I just wouldn't have built PRTI if it needed a federal grant or some kind of state low interest loan. I just think that's garbage and a waste of time.
Well, that's a really respectable take on starting a business. Absolutely. I mean, you don't want to be a drag on the system, right?
Look, when the subsidies go away, was it really a business, or was this a social experiment using taxpayer dollars?
Yeah, very good point. Now, pivoting to Bitcoin specifically, I think I heard you say on one of the podcasts that you think Bitcoin has to succeed in order for the rest of cryptocurrency to succeed. My question is, why does Bitcoin have to succeed in order for, say, Ethereum or Monero to succeed? Why do you think another coin can't overtake the number one spot?
Well, think about what we're talking about, right? We're talking about Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper, and we're talking about Bitcoin as a blockchain, right? It is a blockchain. And if Bitcoin was to be hacked, it's probably 80% of the whole market cap of the whole industry. You may have a $200 billion market cap right now, and Bitcoin's $170 billion of it. Imagine if Bitcoin was hacked. Would anyone give two Fs about Ethereum or Runecoin?
Absolutely not.
So let's not, it's so simple a question to answer.
Right.
It doesn't matter at that point. You would have penetrated the whole thesis, which is you solved a hundreds or thousands-year-old Byzantine problem, the double spend. That's it, right? You created a triple ledger accounting system and solved the double spend problem. That's really the genius of this system. Now, the development of smart contracts, development of Lightning Network, development of Thor chain, whatever it is, those are layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, whatever. Those are really cool inventions on top of the internet. Bitcoin to me is the internet. Now build a company on it.
But you're not a total maximalist of a Bitcoin. You do believe in...
No, not at all. Out of the three of us, so out of Mark Yusko, Anthony Pompliano, and myself, I'd say I pursue most of the alternative projects. Mark next, and then Pomp.
Oh, really? Mark before Pomp?
Yeah, I would think Mark is more interested in alternatives to Bitcoin than Pomp. And I don't even think Pomp is a maximalist. I just think he doesn't spend a lot of time investing his research time and personal time in alternative mechanisms or schemes.
Right. No, and I think perfectly reasonable to take that stance right now. I definitely, before launching my podcast, think about my podcast. Well, I know Bitcoin's king and it's probably going to stay king for a long time. Let's do something to do with Bitcoin, right? So I definitely share much of the same sentiment. Something else I think you said a while back that you were talking about mining, and it's particularly smart to mine privacy coins. I wondered if you mind expanding on why you think that is.
Well, I'm not so sure it's smart to mine privacy coins, but I think if you're in the privacy coin space, you have to mine them because then they're truly anonymous, right? If I was going to do chain analysis of a privacy coin, if you actually mined it and have it in a wallet, it's truly new. It's totally private, right? There's no chain to analyze. So I think in the game of money laundering or deception, the critical step is mining. Does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're getting Monero off of Binance or something or another big exchange, like they're going to see exactly what happens. So
yeah, I mean, look, I was working on a thesis for the United States military about how do you kill the war in Afghanistan? Well, you flood the market with dummy ammunition that jams in AK-47s. See how easy that would be? I don't have to go get the guns. I just make the ammunition explode in the gun. And you know how easy it is for me to do that? It's like creating a virus. It's an ammunition virus. So I don't go and get all the guns in Afghanistan. Everybody's got an AK-47. No, I just flood the market with bad munition. You catch my drift? Same thing with Monero. If I want to trace you, I just tag a bunch of Monero through chain analysis, and then I put it into circulation. Not a lot of circulation and not a lot of exchange of Monero, but that's how I would do it. I would attack the provenance of the coin.
Kind of pivoting a little bit to digital asset security. Security obviously a major concern for cryptocurrency holders. You've said that I think you said that you have a BitFi wallet. You don't have one?
I have. Oh yeah. I've used it. Now I test this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, a BitFi wallet. I use a number of hardware wallets or cold storage, Ledger Nano S, a bunch. But continue.
Yeah, no, I just because I'm obviously a fan. My Twitter handle's at BitFi Warrior. Just wanted to ask, what was your take on it and their approach to their UX, their UI, and their approach on security can maybe compared because you said that you try a bunch of these long-term storage methods.
Yeah.
What was your take?
I'll tell you, and it's probably not popular, my position at this point. Jay-Z said it best. I want to thank the shoebox for holding all my cash. Now, think about what I'm saying right there. If I'm trying to protect something or hide it from someone, putting my cash in a shoebox under the bed is one way to do it. But how much can you really put in a shoebox under your bed? A shoebox full. And if you put 2 shoeboxes, now you have 2 shoeboxes full. I don't think you really want to put your whole under your bed capacity of cash in shoeboxes. It's dangerous, right? That seems dangerous, right? Because someone could break in your house and try to steal your stuff. And you got a lot of stuff. So the more stuff you have hidden under your bed, the more you are of a target. If you're dealing in cold storage, so if you have a Ledger Nano S and you decide to put a lot on that, and you're one of these guys that says not your keys, not your coins, you've got to protect your password more than you do the hardware device, right? But you could lose them. You can die with them. And I just don't think if you're dealing in large amounts of money, you don't want multi-sig, you don't want third-party custodians that are real, you don't want trusts, because those are the mechanisms that we've used historically to protect great wealth. So anyone who has achieved any form of asset accumulation has some kind of will, some kind of trust, some kind of custody, some type of protection, some type of third party involved, and it does not exclude Bitcoin, because that's just small time, small ball thinking.
So from what I get, what you're saying, like obviously the shoebox analogy, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, and third parties have always been used in history. So I mean, if you have a lot of assets, you want to use both probably.
Yeah. Does this make sense to you? I'm stacking. Look here. Does this make sense to you? Okay. Each one is 100 Troy ounces. Why would you physically have this? How do you protect it? And it's not easily transferable. This is almost too much weight to carry. It's stupid. You don't know if it's real. Why would you do that with Bitcoin? It doesn't make sense. And if you're dealing in large amounts, I keep this around just as a prop to make a point. It doesn't make sense to me. If someone came in and blew my brains out right now, my Bitcoin is not lost because I have the seed phrase. It makes no sense.
How much are each one of those bars worth?
It's probably $20 times 100. And then one of them is gold. So that one is whatever the gold price is times 100. It's probably $250,000 worth of space metal. And again, it's just there. Like, why would you take the risk of having that?
Yeah,
it makes no sense. It makes no logical sense. Same thing. So when people try to come at me about Coinbase custody, Gemini custody, whatever third-party custodian you're going to use, and they're going to be in control of your private keys, grow up. Grow up. Because you're talking about one Bitcoin or some fraction of Bitcoin. You're not talking about thousands of Bitcoin. Nobody is going to walk around with a private key with thousands of Bitcoin.
Just to play devil's advocate a little bit, isn't that all relative though? Like if you only have one Bitcoin, that could be everything you have, and you're like, hey, I'm all in.
That's one shoe, right? But that's one shoebox. I get it.
Yeah,
it's one shoebox. Put it under your bed. Hide it in your sock. That's fine. And it's a lot too. I'm not minimizing it. I'm not diminishing it. But that person who only has one Bitcoin probably doesn't live in a 12,000 square foot home, doesn't have 10 cars, doesn't have a beach house, it goes on, doesn't have a will, you know what I'm saying? Doesn't have other assets. So they're not thinking the way I'm saying that institutions think. They're not going to take hundreds of millions of dollars and walk around with that in their wallet. That just doesn't make any sense. It's dumb.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with you. It's all circumstantial, right? And what you do with your assets.
It's all experiential and it's all perspective. Hiding your money in a shoebox is what you do when you live in Queens, New York, right? It's what you do when you don't have a bank, but it's not what you do when you have real assets, right? Because you are hiring people. You already have people that you're paying to manage your assets. And those people would be not worth their weight at all if they're telling you, hide your money under your bed.
Yeah. So you get a lot of flack for using third parties? But
of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, maximalists think we're ridiculous. Like, not your keys, not your Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
Of course. I hear that all the time. But they're not managing other people's money. There's no way I would walk around with any Bitcoin on me. It's in third-party custody, in air-gapped cold storage.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Another thing that, you were saying leading up to the Bitcoin halving, that the Bitcoin halving was already priced in, but now I saw that you called for new all-time highs by, I think you said October this year?
October 2020.
By
October 2020, we'll have a challenge of a new all-time high.
My question is simply, why October?
Yeah. So look, this isn't something I just made up recently. I've been talking about it for years. The halving is a known event. It's math. You can look at retrospectively what's happened, and you can also understand what's happening after the halving. And that's why I said it's priced in. The halving will be a non-economic event in regard. There won't be any huge move up. There'll be actually downward pressure. And that's very easy to model out objectively. Think about what's happening. You have buy the news, sell the rumor. That's just, not something that's a fact, but history rhymes. So that's something that happens with events like this. And it's what happened in the days before the halving. You had a sell-off. And then we have real events that are happening around the network of Bitcoin. You have minor capitulation, right? So you have those that are planners and that did not raise the capital or have the appetite to continue the next mining adventure going into the next 4 years. So they hit a wall and turned off their hash or contribution to the Bitcoin network. And then when the halving occurred, that was an absolute event. You had the most dramatic difficulty adjustments happen at the halving. And then you had supply shock, where you only have half as much Bitcoin being produced every day. So that means the rewards got cut in half. So Bitcoin mining revenue essentially got cut in half. So you're going to have all these events happen. You're going to get minor capitulation, buy the rumor, sell the news, a second minor capitulation after the halving. And we know that about 150 days after the halving, you have the supply and demand economics fully realized, and we would see the price move up. And that's what I've been saying. That's what I'm continuing to say. Price of the halving was priced in, and I'm expecting somewhere around 100 days from now to see Bitcoin way up. And 100 days is nothing, right? What is that, 3.5 months? Dude, it's just close. The only thing that's changed for me is it's October. It's not 2 years from now. We're not talking about like 2024, talking about 90 days from now. And that's why people say, oh, Jason buys the top. Look, I'm just showing you that because I'm tired of like the Goldman Sachs and JP Morgans of the world talking about things but doing different things. I'm telling you I'm buying Bitcoin, and I'm showing you the Bitcoin I bought. So I don't want people to think I'm just another talking head. I'm buying Bitcoin, and I'm showing you I bought it. And people are like, oh, he bought the top. He bought the top. Get the fuck out of here. I bought the top. I'm saying Bitcoin's going to be 20,000 or more in October. How am I buying the top right now? If I buy Bitcoin at 9,500, is that the top? Do the math. I'm saying I'm going to 2x in 90 days. Show me an investment that 2x's in 90 days.
Well, and I think 20K in 90 days, like I think a lot of people in the space are calling for even higher around that time or by the end of the year.
I'm just saying a new all-time high in 20 days, which it actually is meaningless because it's a low time preference call. I mean, a high time preference call. And I'm in this for a lot longer than that. I'm actually talking about rebalancing my portfolio 2024. That's when I start to think about selling Bitcoin.
So you think in halvings basically every 4 years with it.
2024, I actually believe we're talking about Bitcoin in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And at that point, I'd be rebalancing my portfolio, which means I'd be selling Bitcoin and deploying that in other investments, not Bitcoin. So I would look at my pie of real estate, stocks, bonds, currencies, commodities, and I'd be rebalancing that in 2024.
No, that makes total sense. After the cycle goes through and, you're going to see Bitcoin come down from all-time highs we saw in the past. I mean, and that's one of the big things I didn't understand when I first got into crypto Bitcoin was that it works in halvings. I got in like right during not at a good time, 2017, right? It was already kind of made most of its gains, like $4,000, $5,000, right? Obviously, there's a much larger cycle that I wasn't seeing in the first few months, right? I mean, it's such a complex space. So, but the last thing I want to ask you about, just about your involvement in robotics. I've heard you say that, you've acquired a few patents in different areas. If I'm not mistaken, I think you went to medical school at Yale.
Dropped out
to start
fast med.
But how have you managed to acquire such vast skill sets?
I finished my medical degree as a PA, so I was able to practice medicine that way. I have a few bachelor's degrees, a master's degree. I was always good at organic chemistry and physics. So I would just tell you, that's been my hobby. So accelerometers or gyroscopes, perpetual motion were fascinating things, synthetic polymer science. And I would just tell you, I was the kid who like took apart his like PlayStation and made a laser and shot the neighbors with it. You know, I don't know, like if that's considered nerdy or what, but that's just the things I like to do. So I was fascinated by like monoped reciprocating motion. And so I've written patents around that activity. So think about one like a pogo stick that jumps without you holding it and you can't knock it over. And so those type patents or solutions are important in biped motion, monoped motion, quadruped motion. You want your robot to be able to run and walk without falling over. And now you see robots that can jump, right? That's part of the work I did, and do backflips. And all of this stuff is just like making the Terminator, where eventually AI and robots attack humans and we're in a war with ourselves.
Yeah, that's kind of a whole nother issue. That's
a whole other podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, definitely scary stuff. I mean, I hope we can take the right precautions when it comes to all that AI mixed with robotics.
AI is wild, man. I mean, when you see Elon Musk get freaked out about stuff, he gets freaked out about AI.
Definitely, I've heard him talk about that and about the AI taking over, right? And I mean, it makes so much sense. I mean, like you look at the internet and how much information is acquired there, and once you have a supercomputer that can fit all that information. But then again, something excites me where like we can connect to that through our neocortex, or I forget the name of, I think Elon Musk has another company, Neuralink or something like that. I don't know.
I mean, I've already talked to a neurosurgeon about this. Like I will, once the FDA approves Neuralink, I want to have that put in my brain.
And what capability, like off the go? I think we're what, 2 years? Are we 1 or 2 years?
12 months.
12 months. And what will that first version allow you to do?
Well, think about what Neuralink is contemplating. So it can return your vision, it can reverse paralysis, right? It can return your hearing. But for me, I want instantaneous recall of all the information in the internet in my brain.
Do you fear that might be a little bit information overload, like we were talking? No.
What you fear as you get old like me is about like recall. What I've found has happened, like I was a skateboarder and a surfer, I've jumped out of airplanes, and now I'm afraid to do like a power slide or skate a half pipe because I'm so fearful of getting hurt, because I've hurt myself doing things that I would never have thought would hurt me. I was a rugby player, played semi-pro soccer in South America, torn my ACLs, been knocked out more than 10 times. It's not a good feeling to contemplate your mortality. And it doesn't happen when you're young. It happens when you're my age. So I'm 46, and I don't like the way it feels. And I don't like what it feels to not be able to recall the name of Elon Musk's company, Neuralink, or to be able to solve math that I used to be able to solve. And I find it frustrating to have to go and search the internet when we're having a discussion rather than pull the information up instantly. Like if I want to know how much cocaine is on US dollars, and it's 90% of US dollars have cocaine on them. I want to have that information because I think it makes me more interesting. And it makes my life more interesting. Yeah,
well, I mean, that steady flow of entertainment and being, and I know I've met other people like that where they just need that constant flow of information coming through them because your mind's moving so quickly.
Watch the movie Matrix again. Think about what they did to Neo, right? When they plugged him in and they taught him about combat, they taught him all combat, right? They didn't just say you're going to be an expert in kung fu or jujitsu. They taught him all the fighting styles. They just downloaded them. Think about that, what I'm saying to you. Like, if I wanted to study the fighting arts, all of them are in my brain. Not one of them, not one kata, all of it is there.
What kind of like price range are we talking about to get this?
It doesn't matter. I don't know, and I don't let those barriers stop me, because look, if you really want it, you'll go get it.
Right. Now, are these anti-aging? Like you said, it cures...
I don't know if these implantables affect age. It may expedite your aging when I really start to think about it. Because think about how much of your brain is actually engaged at any one time. That your brain needs glucose. Glucose is energy. You're burning that energy. What if I turned my brain activity up 5,000%? I mean, am I having to eat constantly? Like, am I going to be on like IVs giving me nutrition? I don't know. But these are interesting things to think about, aren't they?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Right. When I just sit here, I'm burning about 2,000 calories a day just thinking, right? And then if I exercise, it's more and more and more. Think about if your brain is actually working at 5,000 times its current state. Think about the glucose that your brain would need. Think about the amount of calories your body would need. You may age in dog years. I don't know. Seems interesting to me.
Like seems like such a shock to the human body to get all that information in your head constantly. As entertaining and awesome as it is to be able to interact with these technologies, definitely some concerns there.
It may instantly make you schizophrenic. I don't know.
Wait, you're willing to test it?
Yeah.
Are there any like major concerns over it, or?
I don't know what it does to metabolism. I don't know can you even sleep anymore? I already think too much and I have to suppress that through meditation, etc. If your brain is working and accessing all the world's information, how do you actually stop it?
That's one of the cool things about the future is that no one really knows exactly what it is. Jason, I've taken enough of your time here. I really appreciate it, though. Much love. Just anything last thing you want to say, or maybe just where we can follow you and learn more about what you do.
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter at jwilliamsfstmed. If you could just post that for your viewers, that would be cool. And otherwise, I'll see you on the other side. I'm going to have an implantable brain machine. I can't wait.
Hey, man, I hope to be there right with you, man. It's super cool shit.
Very cool. Thanks so much.
All right. See you, Jay.
Bye-bye.
A huge thanks to Jason for coming on to the show today. Please check out our show notes for more information. Support the show by hitting the like and subscribe button. Thank you all for listening to episode 29 of the Halving Report.